everyone. I'm here today just to talk briefly about the Lord's faithfulness and how faithful He's been to me in my life. Of course, He's very, very faithful and was faithful to me even upon the mercy and grace He's shown to wait for me to come into salvation. He was very faithful when He, gave me my spouse, my wonderful husband. I love you. But also recently, in the past year and a half, He just showed His faithfulness to me in great ways, and I wanted to speak about that briefly. I had a miscarriage in December of 2010, and that was really hard. For anyone who's had a miscarriage, you understand. I mean, even though the baby, is not there, you become attached to it. It's growing inside of you, and it's a very hard process to go through. I'm reading off notes here, so I did get pregnant again in the summer of 2011, so that was very exciting. And anyone, like I said again, who's had a miscarriage knows how you're constantly worried and everything is like, because, I just recently lost a child, and I'm scared that it was something you did. So it was very on edge. And then someone had prophesied using the scripture of Luke 2:23, which says, "As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that openeth the womb shall be called holy to the Lord." That was very exciting for me, as it gave me reassurance. For me, mostly, I was just focused on the fact that it said that He would openeth the womb, meaning that He would be born, He would come to term. So that was wonderful relief for me, and my husband mostly focused on the fact that it said male, and I just wanted to ignore that because I really wanted a girl, but AHAYAH knows what He's doing, and He did bless me with a baby boy, so that did come to pass. I had a hard pregnancy. I had bleeding and some infections, a lot of internal bleeding, and I was placed on bed rest. My friends, some of my friends, close friends, and my husband had prayed for me, and I excused myself to the restroom because, I kind of felt a cramp or something, and then after a stone had passed, I'm trying not to be too graphic, but a stone did pass, and after that, the bleeding stopped immediately. So I praised Him for that, and I was very thankful that, again, He had showed, that He was with me and that He was being faithful because I was being faithful to Him. How my son got his name was also quite spiritual, and I know a lot of people probably think, because my name's Sarah, his name's Isaac, that we just took it from, because of that, but actually, my husband was reading out of Genesis aloud at a Bible study for another reason, to someone else, actually, and I was in another room, and when I heard him read Genesis 17:19, which reads, "And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him." I felt the presence of AHAYAH, and I knew that was to be his name. And then I got confirmation from my husband's friend whenever I came back in the room after some other people had left the Bible study. My husband's friends, said, "Hey, that right there sounded like that'd be a good name. I felt something when you read that," and so I hadn't told him what I had felt, so it was kind of confirmation there. So we went ahead and named him Isaac. I started having contractions during my pregnancy on January 10th. Isaac was 30 weeks and 1 day old, or I was a little over 7 months pregnant. My husband took me to a hospital the next day because the contractions weren't stopping, and that hospital, they gave me a shot to try to make the contractions stop and sent me home in about an hour. But the contractions never stopped. I can remember being about 3 a.m. in the morning, and they were still coming like every 4 minutes. So the next day I tried to stick it out until the next day, about around afternoonish, 3 o'clock. I called my mom. My husband wasn't there. So I called her, and she took me to a different hospital, and they went ahead and admitted me, and they started giving me different antibiotics and stuff to stop the contractions. But then my water broke the next day after one night of being in the hospital. So He was coming. He wasn't waiting for anybody. He was born 10 weeks or 2.5 months early. He weighed 4 pounds and was 17.5 inches long. They did have to insert a tube down his throat to help him start breathing, but the tube was removed that night, and they replaced it with like an oxygen thing that goes over your nose. But after one day of being on that, they took him completely off of oxygen, and he was breathing on his own, which is very good for how premature he was. And he actually has always been advanced for preemie. So I thank AHAYAH for that and his blessings that he didn't have to be on that long. And of course, with the birth of a son, I was extremely happy, but given the circumstances, I was also really sad. I can remember the first night in the hospital, my husband, stayed there with me after Isaac was born, waking up around 3 a.m. and feeling my stomach like I'm not pregnant, and my child isn't in the room, because he had to be in the NICU. We could see him like 23 hours a day and stuff like that, so I remember waking my husband up a lot to roll me down there to go see him. But it still just felt weird. You want to have your child with you after he's born. And then when we had to leave the hospital, that was extremely hard. You see everyone else. It's like all of a sudden everyone else has just had a baby. It felt like everyone who I seen in the hospital was leaving with their baby or had their baby with them, and it made me sad. He did end up remaining in the NICU for 1 month and 14 long days. And of course, it was really hard between family, and I was in school full-time, and going to see him, taking care of my other son. So it was a hard transition and a hard time. I did get a phone call while he was in the NICU on January 21st saying that he had blood in his stool, and that they took him off food, and they had taken some x-rays, and they found an infection in his intestinal tract. They told me it was really serious, and they were going to take x-rays every 3 hours to see if it got worse. And if it did, they'd have to operate because it could create a hole in his intestinal wall. They weren't going to feed him for at least 7 days and continue to take x-rays. So I was really upset because, everything was progressing so much. It just kind of like set us back really far. And, it's just scary when you hear something like that. But I knew that AHAYAH, he wouldn't have given me this child and taken me through a rough pregnancy and a hard birth just to take him away. I just knew that that wasn't his will. So I prayed, and my husband prayed, and friends and family prayed. And when my husband and I went to see him that night, nothing had changed, so we went ahead and we had signed a waiver for surgery. And the next day, on January 22nd, we got a call saying they had just taken some new x-rays and the infection wasn't there. And they said, and I quote, "The doctors must have made a mistake." I went up there to see him, and I asked to see the x-rays, and there were at least 8 x-rays, and clearly showing what looked like a railroad track, like 2 lines with the lines inside of it, and it was like a white line on the x-ray inside his tummy. And on the last x-ray, it was gone. And they kept trying to make excuses. Oh, maybe it was a stool, but he hadn't, used the restroom he hadn't used the restroom in that time, and they hadn't been feeding him. So if it was gone, that would mean the excrement would have been gone too, but he hadn't used the bathroom. So I don't know. They just didn't want to, admit there was no medical explanation to how, it was, all of a sudden it was gone. We were about to open him up and do surgery, but now it's gone. So I praise AHAYAH. That was a wonderful blessing, and it just really reassured me that, he was watching over me. This whole, from pregnancy to birth to after birth to this, it just let me know that he was there with me. He was seeing me, and he wasn't going to let me down. Again, his faithfulness. It amazed me, and it really strengthened my faith. And he did eventually come home from the NICU on March the 1st, so of course that was exciting. It was kind of a weird transition. AHAYAH does everything for a reason, and I do believe that he took us through each of these steps for a reason. I'm really thankful. Isaac's continuing to grow. He's a big, big, big boy now. Big. I'll put up pictures, but I just wanted to give that testimony on the faithfulness of AHAYAH. That if you are faithful to him, he will be faithful to you. That he is a real living God that we serve. The Most High, the one true God. And he loves us. He loves his people, his church, the body. He loves us. and he continues to show it. So I give all praise to AHAYAH through his son Yeshaya, and talk to y'all later.
I remember your faithfulness to Noah. I remember your faithfulness to Moses. I remember your faithfulness to David. And I remember your faithfulness to me. I remember your faithfulness to Noah. I remember your faithfulness to Moses. I remember your faithfulness to David. I remember your faith.